Welcome back. Welcome, everyone. And here we are again. I'm here with the director of George Adamski Archives, Glenn Steckling. Hi, Glenn, again. How
Hello, nice to see you.
nice to see you. This is our fifth recording together, and we explore not only topics of UFO, but actually quite universal topics, global, everything what's happening. So let's dive more into some of topics we already mentioned and some questions that obviously people have after listening to our previous conversation. How about that?
Sounds good. I see here
Mhm.
that we have a couple of questions from previous times. And one question has to do with what I think about the abduction to the ninth planet. Um, First of all, let us look at science versus mysticism. And this is something that we have to work most tenaciously about. Science versus mysticism, psychism, and and myths and traditions and all kinds of so-called black powers, so to speak. You know, the things that it quells all our imaginations. But let's look at the reality of things. First of all, there are more than 9 planets in the solar system. This is a scientific fact. There are 12 planets in the solar system, and the Russians even concurred that in the 1950s, and we concurred it in 2006. Pardon me.
Mhm.
And so there are more celestial bodies in the solar system than just 9. And I'm well aware of the fellow by the name of Zecharia Sitchin, who had to do and write his books about the Sumerians and all this other information, Anunnaki and what have you. And he counted the planets from the outside of the solar system in towards the sun, which is not how it's done and is not how it's ever been done, and it will never be done because the orbits are counted from the sun being the central body, then the subsequent planets within their orbits around the sun, and then every 3 planets, there's an asteroid belt. So I give you an example. It looks the same like an old television, your cathode ray tube. What happens is the sun gives off solar winds and energy, and it has a particular polarity, let's say positive. The planets themselves are negative, so it draws that radiation towards each planet. Remember, the sun gives off radiation, it does not give off heat. That is a huge misnomer and a huge misunderstanding. Because if you go closer to the sun in space, the temperature of space does not get any warmer. It requires the radiation from the sun to interact with the planetary atmosphere in order to create heat and then a sustainable environment for life to grow. So, therefore, the sun gives off radiation. It travels to the first set of 3 planets. Behind the third planet, which is between us and Mars, is what's known as an asteroid belt. The asteroid belt pulls the radiation from the sun at greater intensity through that and then shoots it back out the other side so that you have a more standard and uniform abundance of radiation spread out through the universe. We have this terrible misnomer that it has to be what's called a Goldilocks zone, where if you're only this planet and you're only this far from the sun and all these other A, B, C, and D that we make up because we have no clue about what we're talking about, it's just theoretical astrophysics. So we are getting a higher concentration of life-giving radiation, and you'll notice also that the planets are larger as they get away from the sun. So that means it draws more energy because it's a larger magnetic field. right? And also it has a heavier atmosphere on the outside, the ionosphere, and that also buffers the solar radiation as it comes into the atmosphere. For instance, when we first sent out our satellites into space, we registered that the outside temperature of the Earth was 1800 degrees. And the problem was that we were simply bouncing off the top of the ionosphere, that thin shell that is the first barrier of the radiation waves as they come towards the planet. And we had to recognize how to construct our satellites and instruments and programs in order to get that done successfully. The government came to George Adamski. He says, very simple. He says, what you have to do is you have to build multi-hulls like a thermos bottle. And so just like the spaceships themselves that have multiple hulls, the mothership that may be 20 miles long has 3 hulls in which the inner hull may only be 10 miles, which is still incredible. But it shows you that they have mastered the technique of adjusting themselves to nature. So for instance, thereby we learned how to buffer our instruments and then get a more accurate reading. The funny thing is that the instruments that we sent to Mars, we later tested in the Atacama Desert, which is down there in southern Chile. And those instruments gave off readings that there was no life on this planet. And this is what we sent to another planet, the type of instruments, right? And so we have a very, very long way to go before we start to get actual information, and then even longer to go before we give it to the people. So back to the subject. Nobody's getting inducted and going to the 9th planet. They're still arguing, the astronomers, whether Pluto's a planet or not, goes back and forth. They've got nothing else to do because they're sitting there hypothesizing about things and they want to put their name on the paper so that they can get their doctorate and have the fame that they wish to have. But there are more planets, and that is a standardization of number. There are typically 12 planets in every solar system, and it includes then one sun to make 13. 13 is the cosmic number. So you will see if you go back and do a little history research, you will see in ancient Egypt, 13. Among the Native American tribes throughout the entire United States and South America, 13. Always the same universality of numbers. And so when you start to realize this, the pieces to this big jigsaw puzzle comes about a little bit closer. Secondly, nobody's coming to abduct you. I don't care what anybody says. There are so many other tangible reasons for what people are experiencing, whether it's psychosomatic, whether it's sleep deprivation. They just released another study where the government was experimenting with certain drugs that wipes people's memories. I mean, so you have so many of these same symptoms that is being portrayed and projected because people are ignorant. Unfortunately, we have a double whammy. We are arrogant about our own ignorance, which is even worse. And so what happens is that people may visualize things for many different reasons, like we discussed before. It can be stress related, sleep deprivation, relationship. There are so many complexities to the human ego and the human mind that we haven't even scratched the surface of it. In reality, the old saying goes is that we use less than 10% of our mental capabilities. And so, since we don't know what's going on, it is a great travesty to start blaming everything and anything else for conditions that you can't prove, that you can't show with witnesses, that you can't substantiate. This is a terrible, terrible public misinformation and misnomer. That doesn't mean that people aren't experiencing something, but
Mhm.
what they're experiencing comes self-generated, not from an outside source. And
Mhm.
we have so little comprehension of what we can self-generate. You as an individual, if you know the principle, you can self-generate holograms and thought forms, and you can send them someplace else where somebody who's sitting there swears to God you're sitting there right there with them, right?
That's
So that's
very important. Let's stop here for a second, because just to make clear that our mind is so powerful that indeed we can send holograms, we can do this so-called voodoo, black magic, whatever people do out there, and they can absolutely influence someone else's mind and putting things that are not there. Plus the drugs, MK Ultra, and all these experiments that were done, and things that actually are in the normal regular painkillers. We do not know what they actually put in those painkillers. You just think you take a painkiller, and then people have reactions. They can have visions, they can have a sleep deprivation, and they think they're taking painkiller, which in fact could be so much more. And sensitive people are experiencing is, it's everything highlighted even more because people report me that. So that's why we gather this
right.
information, of course. But you mentioned this very also important symbolic number 13 in every, whether mythology, whether scriptures, Sumerians, there is always 13. So again, that's a logic conclusion. If there's always 13, why different number? So this is how logically we can analyze and think about it to keep with the facts. In fact, it's very hard to keep on track with what we're seeing, with the visions, because you cannot trace it. You have to be so careful. Is your vision yours, or it's given by somebody else?
That's
Because
why they made a very simple statement. Know
Mhm.
thyself and you shall know all things. That is a very simple statement. Thereby, when you know yourself, you know what is self generated, you know what is environmentally generated, you know what is generated from other people, from relationships and spouses and all this other thing. And you know that you know what you are. And
Yes.
therefore, like carrying a shield like a medieval armor, you are able to bounce off the things that are not you. But most people don't have that strength or that recognition. And it's not to say that they are not experiencing something in their mind. In their mind, they fully believe of what happens to them, but that doesn't believe that it's so. I can visualize the earth as flat, but it isn't so. I can
Mhm.
visualize the earth as hollow, but it isn't so. You can visualize anything your imagination wants, but it doesn't make it real. And there's the big difference.
That's another thing, that you are addressing this topic from the very realistic point of view, because we do have, let's say, other dimensions. Like we experience maybe creatures, maybe it's a philosophical, something about centaurs, I experience, but we have to be so careful about the density. Maybe there are other dimensions, maybe we do live in world where 13 realities, let's say, parallel worlds, so called. There are a lot of concepts here, and I love these concepts, but I like the fact that you are differentiating between what's real, what's not real in this dimension.
Because it
Mhm.
doesn't make, even if one wants to visualize a different dimension, and even if somebody wants to fantasize about something parallel or whatever, the bottom line is you are here. Here is where you are, and you have to learn how to live and accommodate and recognize and educate yourself here. Somewhere else doesn't make any difference. I can sit here and pretend that I would rather be in wherever, in Garmisch-Partenkirchen, eating the beautiful Käsetorte or whatever. But it doesn't make it real. What is real is the everlasting now. And we are so
Gotta be fantastic.
perplexed. We are so perplexed, but wanting to tell me this, tell me this, give me this, give me that. And if you ask them, well, tell me about now. Who are you? What
Now.
are you? What are you doing? Oh, they have no idea because they want to blame everything else. The stars are going to be my future. The mythology is going to be this. The ocean currents will tell me that. And none of that has nothing because you have domain over all of creation. As much as we hate to admit it, we are the most intelligent creation. We don't act like it, and we
Yes.
certainly don't tap into it. I remember George once said, he said, if I didn't know better, if I had not traveled between the planets and met the other people, I would think that human beings are the stupidest bastards on the face of the earth
Mm.
because they are so whatever it is you want to call them, they are. And so the problem is that we don't want to deal with simplicity. Don't give me something simple because that can't be real.
Mm.
And that's where we go absolutely wrong. Everything that you need to understand yourself and the cosmos is right here, right outside your door, happening every instant and every moment. And and I know people don't like that, and I know they would rather dwell in mysticism, like I told you before, which was so intriguing, was the pictures of the star field, and I think that
Mm.
where's share screen? Here it is.
Fantastic. Yes.
Share screen. Oh, let's go there. Start sharing. Okay. I
Mhm.
just. Where are you?
I'm
Start.
here actually.
Yeah, I see you.
Myself, but let's hope you find the right folder.
Replace the file, skip the file. What in the devil is this? Let's see. I go to the bottom, stop sharing. And no, I am sharing. And let's see if there's any part of
Now you
this.
just show your files. Go to your files.
Yeah,
And
well,
I
there
think
it is.
we
But it
display.
goes to the file, but it says that there's uh, replace, skip this file, whatever. Let's skip it. Let's see if it'll do it here. Here we go.
Yeah.
There we go. And this is what I explained to you before. And I know that people do not like to have their cages rattled or their so-called beliefs questioned because they have held on to them so long. I have a friend of mine I had that I'd known for decades. He's a radio announcer. And he had met George Adamski, and he was actually taken in the car and driven out to the cornfield where the spaceship was sitting, and he watched it. He didn't go on board. And ever since then, he was a believer. But he is a devout Bible emissary, and we started to have a conversation about certain things, and he didn't like the conversation, and so all of a sudden, that's it. There goes a friendship. All right,
Ouch.
that's all
Yes.
right. You know,
That's
life
yes,
life
yes.
goes on. As I said to you before, here's just a picture at night where you are looking up into the stars, and you get to see based upon the limitations of your own eyes,
Mhm.
right? Because there are biological limitations. And we look up into the night sky, and over the millennium and the different civilizations, we have picked out certain stars and we have connected them in a certain way. And one's Leo, and the other one's Sagittarius, and the other one's this and this and this and this. And that's based upon whoever is drawing these lines, because if you draw them a different direction, you get a completely something else. So what happens is you look at that. Now you take binoculars and you look in the same sky. And the same sky now allows you to see what is all else behind there that your eye couldn't see due to the limitations of your cornea, right? So now you think, well, those stars that I originally held such significance to are now blended in with all the others, and now they are not the same anymore. And then we look at the Webb telescope, and it looks even deeper into space. Each one of these stars is a galaxy unto itself. They are probably within these 2 inches, and we've only mapped 2 square inches of space. There's probably hundreds of trillions of planets and solar systems in this entire area. So now you look at this and say, well, which one of these is going to be telling me about my life? And the answer is none of them. Because your life is based upon your actions and what you do, not of the stars or anything else for that matter. This comes from ancient mythology. This is used by ancient priesthoods and religions in order to control you. So you came with your alms and you paid them, and they looked up and they looked like this and they looked like this, and then they told you something, and then you wintered away, and hopefully you were happy with what you heard. But in reality, think about this. When you travel into space, you are surrounded in a three-dimensional field, front, back, up and down, everywhere around you, by this kind of view and this kind of saturation of stars. If you don't know what you're doing, right?
Exactly. Yes,
If
keep
you
going.
don't know what you're doing, I don't know if you can hear the dog. But if you don't know what
No,
you're doing, you don't know where in the world you're going. How would you pick out Earth in one of these star fields? Because the Earth may not even give off enough light to be part of this star field. Now, the big thing is we're moving through space at 17,000 miles an hour. The sun moves at a couple millions of miles per hour, and the solar system moves at millions of miles an hour again. So these stars that you're seeing now were generated millions of years ago. They're no longer in the position they were when they showed you this light, because all of space is in motion and millions of years have passed, and these stars have now moved all the way to the other side somewhere else in a different quadrant. You're not even looking at the manifestation, you're looking at the light that has taken so long to travel to you. So how can the light then be telling you your future and what you are and who you are? It has nothing to do with that. And the space people deal with reality. They don't deal with this kind of nonsense that anything else is responsible for that. They are nothing but servants of the creative force and its magnanimity. And that's the religion that they practice, and that's how they treat each other. And so now it comes to one very simple lesson which they teach us when they came here, and the sages of old have done the same thing. Like Jesus said, no one can carry your burden but yourself. And then Buddha said there are planets in the stars where all of us can go. I mean, if you look at all the ancient sages, no matter what religion, of Hindu, Islamic, or whatever, they each have a portion that gives the people a touch of the truth. And that's what we need to grasp onto, and not just say, well, I had a bad day, so consequently, this
it's
stuff
a little
is,
bit of
is a problem.
aliens.
Yeah, now look at this galaxy. Look at this galaxy. If we were to compare, and this is one of the galaxies like we're in, this is Andromeda, but then you would take one light that's down here in the bottom and say, this is where we are right now. And this is just one of those star clusters. It is literally so mind fascinating to realize the insignificance of our own little problems when it comes to the ability to learn what the cosmos offers us. And that's where we get lost.
I totally understand your line of argument. Let us make sure that people who are going to listen to this also understand what you are really communicating, because some of the people I can already hear, some of my
Sure.
people can already say like, oh, then what about astrology, what about mythology, what about all this? And one thing is that a lot of things can exist at the same time. There are, truths that are out there, because you also have this symbol that you carry. You, whether you believe it that it improves maybe the health or is just a symbol, and whether someone else believes that this actually, the shape is emanating, is an emanation of something. So it works on our psyche, it improves our health, let's say, or protection mechanism, or our centering ourselves, because it is connected to our psyche, to our soul, to our intuitive mind. And apparently star people also use those symbols. So it doesn't mean to put everything away to the trash, like astrology, symbolism, mythology. It doesn't mean that. But what I'm understanding here, it's not to be obsessed about it, and it's not to allow to control your life.
That's right. Let's just take this for an example. I am still who I am, whether I wear this or not. The only reason that I would wear it is one, because you asked me to, and
Thank
and
you.
and two, is because it is nothing more than a reminder of what I am trying to do and where I hope to go with my actions and my service to humanity. And that exists whether I wear the medallion or not. That doesn't make any difference. But all it does is it's a symbol of that which I wish to express, because I'm still the same person whether I take it off or whether I don't, right? And so we have to understand that, and that's just what we've lost from ancient times, is the fact that in ancient times we spoke in a symbolic language, not in an alphabetic language or in a pictograph language. Just because we saw a carving that looks like half man, half fish or whatever, that doesn't mean you got one guy running around with a flipper on. It is a symbolic nature of that. And
Mhm.
that symbolic nature you can carry within you, right?
Perfect.
People should, here's the crux of the matter. People should carry the principles within them, metal or no metal, because what happens is too many times we live in a society where people wear things to show their ascendancy over somebody else. Say, look,
Yes.
I'm the head honcho, I'm the chief witch doctor, I'm this, you're just the peon, and I understand much, much more, and therefore you have to come to me in order to get anywhere because I'm of a higher vibration than you. Garbage. Absolute
Mhm.
nonsense.
Show of the privilege over someone else. I'm so glad. Let's underline this even more. And I hope this is going to be well understood, because this again about the perception, about how people are lied to, programmed into something, and it's very hard for them to differentiate. It was hard for me too, because I was
Mhm.
seeing things that were not there, and apparently they had impact on my life, and other people saw it. And it's not about to be it's about not to be a slave of those things, but navigate through it. I'm not ignoring those things, because it's
Mhm.
also not about ignoring. It's about respecting what you're seeing, differentiating, and finding your true self in it. So you're not less without the amulet talisman you have on yourself, you are still the same, whether you wear it or not. When you would be a slave of it, then you would be enormously insecure if today you're not wearing it, and then that's what
Right,
I'm seeing from people.
right, right.
They are extremely insecure. It's like, oh my God, I forgot my essences. I don't have my protection today. So they
But a lot of
already
people think
depend.
that way. Yes.
Yes, yes, that's what I'm trying to make with you a good point, to let people know that they are not less because they didn't take their favorite amulet with them and they are lacking protection. No, this is just a cooperation, symbolic cooperation with what we have, the tool, and that's all it is. To not be
Because what happens is we like to use the word faith, but we do not understand it, and we sure as heck do not practice it. Because
mm,
if you had the faith, then you would not worry. Remember, as Jesus said, look at the birds and the bees. God creates everything that they need, and look at how much more you are than them. But
yeah,
we do not have the faith to understand that what what we need will be provided, right?
perfect, perfect. So these tools are not to be worshipped. These tools are only there to help us to believe in ourselves.
There you go.
I
Yep.
use them as well. I need them as well. That's what I'm thinking at a certain stages in my life, that I need, I don't know, sage. I need to sage myself because it helps my psyche to
Mhm.
do the right thing, but I'm still the doer.
But as long as you do not become the slave to it,
Exactly.
because you cannot serve two masters at the same time without neglecting one or the other. And the problem is dependency suddenly becomes, well, I feel better today because I used this or that. So therefore, I must have it tomorrow because I want to feel as good tomorrow. Until finally next month, it happens that if I'm without it, it's like a drug addiction. It's
Yeah.
like marijuana. It's like if you're suddenly without it, then you are no longer capable of functioning without that dependency. And we have to learn to depend upon ourselves and not so much the extracurricular stuff. Is there black magic? Absolutely. And is there mythology and is there voodooism? Absolutely. But if you know yourself, you can dissipate that with a wave of a hand. It has no action on you and can do nothing. But if you see it and then you become terror struck and fear struck until your heart races and you have an embolism and fall down and dead, then it has affected you negatively when all you could have done is just waved it away, and it has no form to it. It has no energy or power greater than your own.
I hope this message will be spread to the world because it's a very important one. We still talk about these things. We are not neglecting these things. They are still existing. We do influence one another, our mind. We do see things. But still, we address to come back to ourselves. And none of us probably is without falling for it. I also feel a little bit nicer when I carry my jewelry, right? My favorite stones because I like them. So if we do, we have to do also with the feeling that once we don't have them, we say, "Oh my God, I don't have them." So, but this is the thought to work on, to not find ourselves dependent on it 100%. So every now and then we need to practice relying on ourselves, not just the tools. They are just the tools to help us. I hope
They're
it's like
simple.
clear
They're
enough to.
simply they're simply representations. If I go out the house and forget my watch or whatever, I go and do what I'm going to do. I'm not panic struck about, oh, I don't have this, I don't have that, or I forgot to put this on or that on. No big deal, because those things aren't me. I'm a me. And so therefore I can go and do what I'm going to do, and I don't feel any negative input at all from it. But once again, you have to learn who and what you are. And going back to the ninth planet thing, there are, like I said before, 12 planets in the solar system. They were originally called X, Y, and Z when they were discovered in the 50s. I think one of them is called Clarion now, and then there's another name. But these are all before the very last barrier of the outside of the solar system. And so, I mean, we really have so much to learn, so
Mm,
much basics to learn, that why would we waste one iota of 1 nanosecond to dwell in that which has no tangible value? As you
that's
said
right.
before,
So
I
it's,
want to know the truth. I
mm,
want to experience the truth. I want to understand why this happens, because the only way I can go to the next step is to understand the step in between. You cannot just leapfrog across it. And
mm,
so you have to stay in the university grade that you're in until you can graduate to the next step class and
mm,
move yourself forward. And that is called discipline of the mind. And if there is any lesson that should be learned, or any two lessons that should be learned, is to love one another, the true nature of love, and to discipline our minds. Because if we do not discipline our minds, it runs crazy. And I give you an example. I remember a Buddhist monk once came to visit us, and we knew him for many years. And he once sat there on the couch in the living room and he says, "Well, there are many paths to the truth." So my mother looked at him and smiled, and she said, "Is not the best path directly in a straight line from one point to the next? Is it not the problem that if you go on to tangents, that you get lost on that tangent and then go on another tangent and another tangent until you no longer can see that end value that you were supposed to get to?"
oh,
And the
mm,
problem is with people here in this world is we do not stay on the path,
yep.
because
Hmm.
and because we don't stay on the path, then we've got borscht. I mean, it's that's why everything's zing-zanging all over the place,
Yeah, we
because
don't have a core. You're right about it. We don't have a core within ourselves enough, and we are pulled by other minds, religions, organizations, and anybody. I had so many people reporting me through those 2 years that they thought they will join the organization, spiritual centers, whatever is out there, and they come out broken, reprogrammed, brainwashed, because it wasn't what they hoped for. They were asking somebody else to show them where they're going. And obviously other minds are not interested in getting you to your goal because they have their own agenda.
there's no shortcut. And that's the problem. People want a shortcut. They want you to take them in hand. That's all the East Indian philosophies, the guru. Take me in hand and just
Right.
take my things away from me so I'm not tempted, and I'll walk behind you with the shaved head and begging for alms and eating a little bit of rice here and there. But they are asking for someone to lead them to their final destination, and they don't realize that the only one is you, because you have to have the recognition. Why?
Mhm.
Why? Yeah,
No,
without
it's
without the
perfect.
without
Perfect.
the recognition, you can get nowhere. Like Jesus said to his disciples, "Who do you say that I am?" And so Peter answered, and he got the answer right, because he got the answer through his inside connection to his own teacher and not from what the other people said. Entirely
Yeah.
different thing.
It's actually fantastic. I have another great example metaphor also, because it's everything we touch in life. I'm a dancer, for example. And in a dancer, a woman follows the partner, follows the man.
Hmm.
But in fact, I don't know if my partner is going to be good or not good, or is going to keep the steps and the rhythm or not. So in fact, I'm following the rhythm and music and myself first.
Hmm.
If I see the partner is good, I follow him. If not, I block him. Because if I allow him to throw me off my balance, I will fall, not him, right?
Yeah,
That's a
that's true.
perfect one. That's absolutely perfect.
That's a good analogy. That's right. And we go so far in order to so-called find uh, uh, a teacher. I mean, there was such an exodus of people to the Far East at one time. All the Hollywood people ran there because of the so-called spirituality
Yeah.
and these sort of things. And they found out they didn't get it much further than they were already, because you cannot run either to yourself or away from yourself. You are always with yourself. And so, um,
You know
these
what?
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, these are things that our space friends live by, and they have gotten over the um, um, the confusion factor,
Mm,
and all while there are still some worlds where they practice, I hate to use the word black magic, but in a way that is what it is. They use the negative side of the principles, and so they feel like they acquire a great deal of power. But I give you an example. It was best shown to me. I was once told, said, put a coin in your hand, close your hand, and squeeze it as hard as you can,
mm-hmm.
and do it for as long as you can. And then obviously after a certain period of time, you
Yes.
can't maintain that anymore. You got to open your fingers and you got to relax the muscle, and the coin falls out. And so the lesson was it not easier just to let the coin rest in your hand rather than to exert all this mental and physical pressure and power in order to maintain something that you can't maintain to begin with? And so that was a lesson in allowing the natural power within you, which is a billion times stronger than any kind of other power that you can generate by the mind.
Yes, perfect one. You know, it's like it is happening. The society of slaves, I would say, it is happening because indeed people are programmed into becoming a slave. So they asking for it. Is the slave mentality. And they asking, please control me so I can let go. Please control me, take care of me. So the governments are doing exactly that. They were asked to do so. They created that. People created that system themselves, and it a little bit turned against themselves. And the same thing is with the spiritual teachers, because if you do create organization when you have followers, then they give you your life force, they give you energy. I'm following you, I'm loving you, I'm giving you energy, and they sort of live from it. And the real spiritual teachers who are taking real, mentoring people, they never have more than 10, 12 students like Jesus, right? They do not have
All of
thousands,
them,
they do
all
not.
of them, every single one of them had 12 disciples.
Exactly, never more, because you take the full responsibility for the lives of those people in this current phase of lifetime. And another thing is, we do. when you speak publicly. We do influence people too.
Mhm.
And some people, it's so easy to abuse this power because people also ask you, ask me, what shall I do? What should I do? Tell me what to do. Read me cards. And I can do that as long as it's just cards. But if I ever would be a priestess or preaching anything, is to follow yourself, not me. Not to
Yeah,
mention, it's
well,
a
that's true,
tremendous
but that's not
responsibility.
that's not how you and I dabbled in religion in the ancient Egypt, because that's not how it worked during those times.
Oh
And
no.
so we are both guilty of abuse of the system, and
Yeah,
so we have to make some amends for that. But the idea is you never give your life force away. Never. And
to anyone.
nobody
Yes.
and nobody who is real would ever ask for it.
Thank
Be-
you.
Right?
I hope it's going to help many, many people right now. The words that we are speaking out loud here to differentiate. You have no idea how many people paid enormous amounts of money to
Hmm.
so-called leaders, and they became only slaves. Not only paying the money because just money are the least important here. They gave away their life to those organizations to follow those systems, people, and then they landed with nothing.
Because life is given to you by God, by the creative force. No one else can give it to you, and no one else can take it away. And anyone who proclaims that they can do that is a charlatan to begin with.
Okay, I think it's clear enough.
Yeah. Let me
Let's
show
go
you
on.
let me show you a
Yes.
couple more things to look at while we're here, right, which I find fascinating. First of all, here's a picture of Neptune, how absolutely beautiful Neptune is, and all these planets have rings around it, like Saturn. George Adamski went into space, and he said to the people, 99% of all your planets have rings around it, like you do Saturn. And they laughed at him, and sure enough, there it is. For you flat Earth people, here's the Earth coming over the top of the moon. And as you can see it, as the Earth comes up, or what you call Earthrise, you can see that the color of the atmosphere below it starts to reflect the shine of the Earth. So it shows you two things. It shows you not only the Earth, but it shows you that the lunar atmosphere is quite active there. And let's see what else we got. We have got a picture of the astronaut with the halo around them. And the astronauts describe that after traveling in space on the high speeds, that the particles that surround them become what is called supercharged. And it almost becomes like a light magnetic field, like a halo that is around them. And
Like
they
an
experiment.
aura.
That's right. Like, and they experienced that on the moon. And the funny thing is that some UFO witnesses have said the same thing, especially if you look in Roberto Pinotti's book about the contacts in Italy, that some of the space people came out in their suits and they would glow lightly, the same sort of manifestation. Of course, the Earth's from space. I mean, if that isn't round, then somebody needs glasses. And and here's Mars. Mars is interesting too. Look at the polar ice cap, and it has it on both sides. But here's the better one yet. The better one yet is this one. Look how far that snow extends on Mars. Now, if you've got snow to this degree, which means water, and you've
Mm.
got light atmosphere, which they already admit to, and they have salt water. In 1963, George wrote in his book that there is salt water on Mars. 3 years ago, they admitted to the fact that Mars has salt water. Everything the guy said, he always said truthfully, and boy, do they hate him for it. Here's one of the best pictures. I may have shown it to you already. This is a Mariner shot taken in 1970, Mariner 10 of Venus.
Mm.
Now, not
Mhm.
only do you see the clouds, which are in motion, due to the atmospheric winds like you have on Earth, the polar winds. But if you look on both ends, you have polar ice caps. Now, they tell you it's 800 degrees Fahrenheit. What kind of ice doesn't melt under 800 degrees? So they're not, they don't. And here's the recent picture that was taken by the Japanese, also showing the deep blue behind underneath, reminiscent of aquatic bodies, and also the atmospheric clouds that are around it. And so if we didn't have people who went to go in there and actually take a look at what is actually going on, then we would be in a shape that we shouldn't be in as far as knowledge is concerned. You can see from this diagram how the magnetic fields are traveling away from the Earth. But more importantly, we are also trailing organic chemistry. What is that?
Mm-hmm.
Amino acids, RNA and DNA, water molecules, all the elements that compose life. It trails behind us like a comet. And as we travel through space, we mix with the Martian orbit and the other orbits. That's why we go to the Antarctica and find meteorites that come from Mars. How else would they get here? About 2 tons worth of this organic material falls on our planet every day.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
so life in space, space is the womb of creation. That is where life is propagated and finally compounded and comes to fruition
Mhm.
until till finally it gets to a point where the rest of life and the rest of beings can then come and inhabit that world. And
Let me
so
go back, sorry, to that moment of the meteors falling down on Earth, because this actually is a wonderful proof for anyone who claims that there is a net around the world and around the Earth, that nothing comes in, nothing comes out. And when I was writing my fantasy story, I saw something like that in a certain period of
they
time. Like
they call
there
that
was
the
a,
Van Allen radiation
yeah,
belts. And
quarantine,
somebody asked me that
something
too.
like that. Hmm.
First of all, the Van Allen radiation belts are what? When you ask people questions about what they say, I did this. I was in a lecture. I said, "Tell me, what is the Van Allen radiation belt?" And the guy goes, he doesn't know. I said, "Well, let me make life simple for you. It's a conglomeration of charged particles. Charged
Hmm.
particles are surrounding you everywhere, every day, every place. You have 1,500 lines of magnetic force per square inch that surrounds you. You and I sitting right here where we are right now. The Van Allen radiation belt has absolutely nothing to do with keeping something locked into orbit. And as we can see, we watch the spacecraft go by a telescope out into space. And this is an excellent, comes from the Science Times. It says here that the current theory suggests that some 4 billion years ago, huge amounts of elements essential to life and perhaps also more complex organic molecules as amino acids were showered onto the Earth and other planets by comets, meteorites, and interstellar dust. Remember, water is the most common element in space. You are literally surrounded in water like an ocean. It
Hmm.
says organic synthesis is going on everywhere in the atmosphere of the planets, on the surface of Pluto, and between the stars. The universe is full of organic chemistry. And so, once again, reality,
Okay.
facts,
Yeah.
these are the
Um,
things that should be our greatest concern.
Now, just to make it clear, I'm not saying that what people are seeing, because I also, portrayed it in my book. Like I saw this Earth on quarantine. I had also vision like that. So I'm not saying that people seeing they have bad visions or whatever. The thing is that because you talk about particles, what we're seeing in the visions, we interpret, and then it's already obscured by our perception or interpretation. So we see something, but then is it possible, for example, that what I saw and many other people saw, the Earth on quarantine or something, they called it, because Earth on quarantine is an interpretation, what you see. But what is, for example, in my book, is that the character was going with the spaceship and it was like bounced out of the Earth. So is it possible that temporarily something happened, that due to electromagnetic field, maybe that something could be potentially, could that be a fact in a cosmic space? Because I am not, I didn't study that. That was just a vision. But is it
So
possible
let
that
me
could be
ask you,
possible?
a question. Does nature, and let us look at what nature means. Nature is the universal manifestation of creation. Does nature discriminate?
No, not at all.
Okay, it does not. It does not discriminate whatsoever. And George told a cute little story about this in one of his tapes that he says, can you imagine? I'm living in this village and the people don't like what I say. And so they tell me, George, you've got to leave. We banish you to the woods. And he goes into the woods and there sits the berry tree, and the berries, they say to him, come and eat of me. I have all the food here you could possibly want. It does not discriminate based upon what man had described him to be. So he goes to the brook to drink, and the river in the brook says, come, drink of me, nourish yourself, because it does not discriminate upon what people in the minds think. And so after a few years, George comes out of the woods, and the people are looking at him incredulously because he looks fit and happy and full and not malnourished. And that is because nature does not discriminate.
And
So,
doesn't punish you. Only
and it,
people can punish.
that's right. There is no such thing as revenge. That is man-made. There is
Yeah.
no such thing as jealousy. That is man-made. There is no such thing as sin and punishment. Now,
Mm.
what that little saying in the Bible that the church people hate so much, that every man must carry his own burden, is telling you that somebody else cannot take the responsibilities of your actions away from you. You caused them, you fix them. That's how nature works. And so now nature is not going to say, well, JoAnna, you've been a louse, and we're not going to let you in here because we think you're not good enough. So come back some other time. Nature does not work that way. Nature will never work that way. And so, and when you understand how inclusive nature is, it is open to everybody and everything. And there is no discrimination. Doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm. So, is it possible to explain not only my vision, but many other people, in a sense of magnets, because some magnet, the plus and minuses, they react. It's a natural thing. It's not about discrimination. It's just science. That magnet are the plus and plus, they are going away, right, from each other, and plus and minus, they're coming together. So in the visions, if we do not have a science behind it, we interpret crazy things.
That's exactly right. That's exactly what we do. And you just hit it on a nutshell. All of creation, I don't care whether it's here, on the moon, the other side of the cosmos, all of it is based on magnetism, the attraction of positive to negative. There is no attraction and no combination that works positive to positive or negative to negative. These are precepts that we ourselves have created and then made excuses for in order to get what we want. And we will find that the people that do that are never happy. They're never satisfied. They're never emotionally stable. And all of that combined, because all of creation around you is going about its fulfillment and business. Why would you not partake of that? Why would I want to exert energy? Like I said to a scientist, I said, you know that the propulsion system for these spaceships is pro-gravity, not anti-gravity. These terms like anti-gravity and anti-this and anti-that, this is coming from your science fi and your imaginary, and I'll tell you why. Because the planet produces so much power. It's like a giant Van de Graaff if you look here. It is a giant Van de Graaff, and it produces hundreds of trillions of power, so much that one lightning bolt off a thunderstorm could power a city for the entire month if we knew how to harness it. So what happens is that it produces so much power that why would you be so stupid, so foolish as to imagine that you have to create a power source that is so powerful to nullify the planetary power and then rebuild more anti-power? You would be doing 3 times the amount when if you just merged with pro-gravity and the forces of nature, you got everything you need. And we go against everything. And that's why we get so little traction, so little distance in our science. And of course, science would say, well, we need to have an open mind and we need to experiment, we need to do this, we need to do that, that. So be it. But you don't need to experiment of splitting an atom where you can create nothing but a hydrogen bomb that will blow everything to pieces and destroy everything. That is not experimentation. That is sheer insanity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I cannot agree more with that part. So I have so many more questions to you, but of course, I am always challenged how to make the title so people have an idea what they can find in one particular video with you, because the topics that we are touching on, it's good to take it slow and a little bit more deeper, to bring just a little bit more understanding with attempt of understanding a lot of sides of the story, because people are, instead of making the communication between different points of view or whatever they think of, they fight each other, you know. The scientific world fights those people who have visions, and you know, if they could just if I can just come to the scientist and say, hey, I have this vision, please help me understand what am I really seeing here, how we can connect here, how we can interpret, because these people who have visions, they can help scientists, like star people, they can help scientists to
Sure.
understand more and go faster in their scientific research. What George Adamski wrote in his books, our scientists are discovering now, right? About the Mars, about the different planets. We can help each other instead of fighting each other on every topic, and just bring this understanding instead of, no, it's not true what you're seeing. There is something to it. You know, maybe I saw those magnets, maybe, you know, that's what we're seeing, but I'm sure there is a perfect scientific explanation to also some of the visions.
Well, yes, and of course, and there are some things that we have learned. I was involved with a scientist. He passed away a couple of years ago. He was one of the government's premier counselors on remote viewing. And
Mm,
remote viewing is a very definitive and very logical. It allows you to look at what's going on in a different place, and to, in a way, you're there without physically being there. And this is part of, these are the very early stages of development of ourselves as being, because as we develop further along, we can then transport ourselves from one place to the next. We cannot mechanically
You talk about teleportation?
teleportation. Yes.
Ah, go.
Teleportation, we can mechanically teleport innate objects, rocks, tables, chairs, tanks, these kind of things. We cannot mechanically teleport sentient beings because they have a soul. We are more than just the combination of molecules. We are also inhabited by the soul. And I give you an example. In the 1940, I believe 41, there was the Philadelphia experiment. And the Philadelphia experiment was using an old destroyer by the name of USS Eldridge, in which they were experimenting to teleport it because we thought, well, if we could teleport our battle equipment into the middle of the battlefield versus having to go there, this would give us a huge supremacy and strategic benefit versus our enemies. And what they found out is that by teleporting the ship arrived where they sent it, but the bodies of the people were ingrained into the middle of the ship, into the bulkheads, into the wheel houses. They were
They died.
literally grotesquely dead.
Ah,
They were
yeah.
dead and grotesquely disformed because you cannot mechanically teleport a human being. You can teleport yourself if you know the principle, but you cannot do it mechanically.
Okay.
It's not Star Trek. So for instance, quickly,
Mm-hmm.
there are those who have the technology of teleportation and they do it collectively as a group. So let's say, for instance, they build themselves a ship and they crew it with 100 people, and each one of these 100 people has gone through rigorous testing and screening and as to the ability to themselves use teleportation. These people then crew this ship and they can transport themselves to the other side of the galaxy instantaneously. But if you are sitting on that same ship and you don't know that principle, you're ending up floating in space dead. So
Dangerous.
it
Mm-hmm.
requires a uniform state of development. And it takes quite a while to attain that point. But it also allows you to be two places at the same time as well.
Mm. Father Pio could do that, they say.
Well,
They
yeah,
say so.
yeah, they
Um,
say so.
that's fantastic that you mentioned that whole another topic. I have no idea how I'm gonna incorporate that in the title, but I
nobody,
want to
nobody said I was going to make it easy on you.
exactly. So we have fantastic journey to get together here. But that's a topic I want to definitely dive more into teleportation because we do have some, and some people, it happened to them spontaneously. They started to meditate and they like teleport their astral, let's say, bodies, like part of their bodies, and someone else saw them on the street in another country and they say, oh no, I was just meditating. So this relocating part of our different subtle bodies is already a fact, but to fully
Right.
do that, that's a technology that I am not sure how many of us can achieve right now.
And remember that there are stages to the acquisition of this learning. So just because you can sit somewhere and meditate and project yourself somewhere, that means that you are projecting a hologram of yourself. You
Yeah.
are not physically projecting yourself. There's an entire difference between projection and teleportation. They're entirely two different things.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So I think it's good that people know if they project their hologram, which is happening, some people reported that, and they have proofs of other witnesses of doing that, and the full teleportation. But before we finish this part, I have to ask you, what, how can your alien friends help us with our health? So many people suffer from the pain, from the, everything is like, some people say the earth is sick, so we also suffer because the earth is also reflection. We are one organism. How can we help, or can your alien people help us with our health on so many levels?
First of all, the planet, the Earth itself, is much more grandiose and much more powerful than any individual or group of individuals. So let's get that straight. We may take little mosquito bites out of it, but in reality, the Earth is much more omnipotent than we are. Secondly, um, they do not interfere with natural law, which means, let's say,
Which is unfortunate in this case. So,
well, no, it's not unfortunate in this case because
yeah.
they are true to
Mm.
they are true to their mandate, and they just don't sell out simply because of somebody they like or love or what have you. So they do not personalize the the principle. We here on this planet personalize everything. God's got to be an old man sitting up on a throne, and he's going to listen to everything we say, and all of this other kind of nonsense. And my question was to these people was, well, when Oma passed away, she was 90 and she didn't look too good. So when she gets to heaven, is she going to is she going to be looking 90 years old like she did when she died, or is she going to look like she was 20? And if
Uh-huh.
she looks like when she was 20, then how the hell are any of us going to recognize her, because none of us knew her when she was 20, right? And so the questioning mind of children, but um, they do not interfere with natural principle. We are born of this world,
Mm.
and because we are born of this world, we are susceptible to the genetics and to the hereditary portions of what are composing our forms. And so sometimes it's better than others, but they are not going in there and manipulating nature because they realize that nature is infinite and omnipotent, and thereby they know that it will eventually take care of itself. Yes, they do have some machinery in which you can lay on kind of like on a bed, and then you have an electromagnetic pulse. It looks very much like a CAT scanner that you get at the hospital, and it goes across your body, and consequently it helps with cellular regeneration. But it's not used as a substitute for for doing what you need to do and the longevity that you will live in this form. Because remember, they know that this form is just a transient form. And so therefore, there is no fear on their part to I'm going to kill this dog. There
Oh,
is
don't do that.
Yeah, there's
We
no
cannot hear it.
fear. There is no fear on their part in order to change forms. While we are constant state of fearfulness that we're going to pass away, where are we going to go? We won't see our loved ones, blah, 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 blah. Thank God. Thank God you leave all of that behind. Because how in the world could you ever progress if you always are held back by that which you leave behind? let's say you and I have lived 1,000,000 lifetimes, and we've been both men and women, each one of us. We both have had children, and so on and so forth. We would never be getting anywhere because we would be constantly held back by
Yeah.
this whole plethora of this giant web that is immersed around us. And nature is very kind. That is the law of kindness sees to it that you can remember some of the things that are important, and you can remember associations with those that you have interacted. Not everybody, because I mean, I've met thousands of people in my lifetime here, and hell, I can't remember a quarter of them. But the idea is that the specific ones, that does make a difference, and so they don't fear death. For them, it's like moving into a new apartment, and they do
Yeah,
so with the greatest
exactly.
amount of intelligence, right? And
Hmm.
so, I could have said, all right, my father, he had rheumatic fever during the war, which affected his heart valve. Nobody knew it until the year before his death, when he had to have a heart surgery. And you can say to yourself, well, with all the work that he did and everything he stood for, you know, why wasn't he getting help? And the answer from their perspective is, he did all this work, he learned what he needed to learn, and now he is free to move on. So
It's a more like a release from this
that's
current
right. So
battles with the
nature,
war.
so
Mhm.
nature released him. And so we have to disconnect our own personalities and our own personal traditions. And we have such a hard time doing that because we can't let people go.
Yeah, well, we want to sustain our nice apartments. We got used to it.
Well,
Our
the problem is that the mourners of the person who passed are not mourning the person who passed. The
Yeah, they're
They're
all
mourning
us.
the fact that they don't get to interact with them anymore. So it becomes a selfish thing. In reality, I don't get to see Opa anymore, and we don't get to do this and do that and do that. Instead of saying, okay, it was time to go, and you should be. I kind of like the Irish tradition where they have this wake and everybody has something to eat and drinks a little whiskey and tells a few jokes, and on you go.
Hmm. Okay, I think that it will be enough material for our part 5, and we will move on to part 6 soon. So looking forward, and I hope you do look forward for more parts with Glenn. Glenn, thank you so much for today material and so many meaningful thoughts, something to get inspired and reflect on our life, where we going, where we want to go in our lifetime, and how to go about it so we're not slaves of our tools and systems and everything else, so we can cooperate more in understanding. Thank you so much.
We need just simply to not be slaves means to not be holden to your acquisitions. You can get a new couch, you can get a new car, you can buy new jewelry, but how many people would fight somebody to the death for their acquisitions that break in? Where you could simply say, hey, all right, take the crap, I'll get myself some new one. And that way you don't find yourself in a position where you confront the ultimate loss of your life for a bunch of worthless stuff that can be replaced at any time. We need to think of what is important and what isn't.
Thank you. That's a perfect ending. So everyone, we are waiting for your comments, questions. What's going to happen next? Thank you for now. Until the next time. Bye bye.